Does anyone have a question?
Hi, Stuart. Wanted to ask you about fear and when we feel it in our bodies for seemingly no reason, no evidence. There's just like that feeling, and it's sort of like in your muscles. Could you talk about that?
You mean about chi?
Fear,
What is Kia? I don't know what that is.
fear, Fear.
SCA
Fear.
Chi.
Sorry, I don't know if my volume is down. Fear, Fear.
She said fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said something.
That's okay. Sorry.
Uh,
I was just experiencing it today for
yeah,
not like a particular reason.
fear is a natural occurrence. Anytime, consciously or unconsciously, we do anything that brings us into an unknown situation, there's going to be fear. Somebody threatening, walking across the street. You understand? A thought in your brain about some insecurity is going to bring fear. Fear, not necessarily an unhealthy energy. What makes it unhealthy is our mind gets involved. We think about it, we analyze it, we build it up into some kind of creature like a Frankenstein, and it takes over. Understand? But if, we listen to the fear and we get more conscious and more centered inside ourselves, the fear is going to guide us through some situations, that we have to be more conscious about. And I think it's an important element. What makes it really terrible is let the mind get involved in it. And then we create, it's like one of these Frankenstein movies, it becomes like a scary movie that we create inside ourselves. I always use the metaphor of a ship going through a fog and hearing a buoy bell sounding to tell them, hey, there's rocks here. You shouldn't, come here. And you have to navigate around it. And fear is like that. It is just reminding us that we are getting ready to step into the unknown. Something around us is dangerous. We conjure up thinking in our brain that can be very dangerous because often creates a lot of fear. And, and it's just telling us this. And what makes it really dangerous is building it up, creating a creature in one's brain, a monster that begins to live inside us, that can shake us to the very core of our being. So fear it's a multi-complex issue, and it depends upon the development of a person, how strong, how developed they are, how the chakra system is, how much balance there is inside them, if they can stay out of their heads. And the whole point of this meditation, as I keep repeating over and over again, is to build a system inside that makes you capable of doing this, of not allowing fear to get hold of you, or to listen to it and, okay, why is this fear coming to me? Suddenly you look across the street and there's somebody standing there with a gun. And you intuitively can feel this, understand, and it's telling you to be more careful about what you're doing.
I went for a walk. I went out in nature. I was aware that I was experiencing it. I didn't know why, so I was just trying to be not like I say have it take over.
There might have been a bear in the woods looking for you. How do you know? I mean, look, I used to live in a house that was in bear country and up in Woodstock. And sometimes I look out my window and I see a bear with two cubs. And once I'm sitting there at my desk, which was on the lower level of the house in my office, and I look out the window and I see this creature looking at me. And it couldn't have been too big to be a dog. And I thought, oh my God, it's a bear cub just looking at me through the window. So I got up and it skedaddled away, you know? But, you know, but it was something in me, something's wrong. Something's looking at, you know what? And I look, I see a bear cub looking at me.
So what you're saying, a little bit of fear is a good thing. That's what I understand, right? From what you're saying.
It's not an unhealthy thing. We make it unhealthy.
Yeah. Like crossing the road, you be a bit careful, right? Like, you know, and
you got to look out. You get hit by a, you live in London. I was once in London and I looked in the wrong direction when I crossed the street and I almost got killed. A car came zoom right past me and from the opposite direction, you know? And you have to be conscious about everything you do, the food you eat, the places you walk, when you're out on the street, when you're, it doesn't mean you live in terror. It just means you're conscious. You're conscious about where you are, what you're doing, and fear, a tinge of fear is very healthy because it'll remind you that you have to be more conscious about what you're doing.
I appreciate that because our culture teaches us that we shouldn't have it, then something is wrong. So I appreciate what you're sharing.
It teaches a lot of bullshit, It really does. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it except that people create a monster out of it. It gets into racial things. People are afraid of people in a different race. It's ridiculous, They create monsters out of, they shouldn't be monsters. And all of that stuff is just fear that it grows in people, and suddenly somebody of a different racial color intimidates them, threatens them, and then you have all this prejudice that runs around. I mean, the whole thing is insane. But a little bit of fear just makes you more conscious.
So I saw a video once, like those kids are walking on the ledge, high building, right? So they don't have any fear, but I felt that it's a bit stupid to do that, right? Because you could die immediately, right? So,
look, all kinds of reasons to be afraid, But mostly what people are really afraid of is death. They're afraid of the unknown. And that's understandable. We have, like Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that's the question. And that's always the question in everybody's mind, because one day we're not to be. And there's all that fear because it's completely unknown. That undiscovered country from whose born no traveler returns puzzles the will. I mean, it's in Shakespeare, perfectly said. And people are afraid of it. If you do deep spiritual practice, your consciousness eliminates both life and death. And just think how much fear you get rid of by just doing that. Deep spiritual practice, transforms both life and death into the exact same thing. It's just the soul evolving. And it eliminates so much fear inside people. Fear of money, another big thing. Everybody's so afraid that, about money. It paralyzes people. And none of this stuff should paralyze people. People are paralyzed because they haven't done enough work on themselves. They haven't developed a spiritual life. And in the development of a spiritual life, you eliminate fear. There's a certain fearlessness about it. You know, the things that intimidate people don't intimidate us. Life, death. People are, you know, we're afraid of death, but no, mostly people are truly afraid of life. They're afraid to truly live in a creative way of stepping into the unknown all the time, taking chances in life, experiencing miraculous things. This is one of the biggest fears. I always say the biggest fear is not death, it's life. If we learn how to be happy in this world, then we're not going to be afraid of dying. Very good question, Paul. It really brings up some very profound stuff. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
I'll ask you, Stuart, something in the form of like, what's one of the most important lessons or teachings you've got from this practice?
From what?
From the meditation, from being a teacher of it. Yeah, from this practice.
You know, I don't know how to answer that, Wendy, because my entire life has been one major realization after the other. So I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what the most important thing began with the realization of having a true teacher, what it meant to have a real spiritual teacher, and how important that was in my life, and what it meant to honor that relationship, and how to learn ultimately, you know, how to listen. To listen. It's not that Rudy said everything that, you know, he made mistakes, but I never saw them as mistakes. I saw everything he told me was just energy that could help me to grow. And it made me so conscious about how absolutely essential it is to have somebody in your life who really cares enough about helping you to have a spiritual life. And then I said, you have to honor this. You have to truly honor this. Yeah, and he used to beat the crap out of me, you know, not physically, but he would say things I almost couldn't believe the kind of stuff he would say to me, you know? But I knew what he was doing. He needed for me to break my ego down, and I had to honor it. He needed for me to overcome my fear and my insecurity, and I honored it. And eventually, all of those things came. The ego got broken down. The fear went away. And my capacity to do things I never dreamed I could do just became possible. So I don't know the one, you know, Zen moment that gave me my enlightenment. You know, I don't know that. I do know that there were so many of them that came one after the other that I had to just open to the extraordinary nature of what this work was bringing into my life. I mean, every one of you are part of the miracle of this work. Every single person that's here is part of the miracle of this meditation practice. I honor that. And you and yourself have to feel that worthiness of receiving the kind of teachings that are being offered in these classes. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Thanks, Stuart.
You're welcome.
Could you talk about loyalty?
Excuse me?
Could you talk about loyalty? Surrendering?
Well, look, you know, I can only talk from my own life, Soren. You know, early on, I found out what worked for me. I found out what was giving me a spiritual life. I found out what was helping me to grow every day of my life. I found out how powerful it was, how deep it forced me to go inside myself. I found out how it brought all the answers that I needed to help me get closer to God. And just discovering that, I said, Stuart, what's the point of jerking myself around with stuff that doesn't work? You know, I have to be loyal to what works, to what really makes it possible for me to grow. You know, not chasing illusions and Maya and all the stuff that goes on in the world that, you know, really just only leads to the grave. But finding what works for you and committing yourself to it and using it every day to grow, that's a profound sense of loyalty. You know, being grateful to people that truly care about you and care that you are getting the most creative areas in yourself exposed and opened so that you as a human being can really grow in this life. I mean, why not be loyal to something like that?
Mm.
But then it takes maturity, it takes depth, it takes growth to recognize these things. One has to have patience and understand that this only comes over time. I mean, I learned that years ago. That's why I do this work, because it has worked for me for so many years, given me a depth of understanding, a depth of spiritual evolution, you know, and that created my loyalty to God, you know, because, I mean, I never expected to be doing this. I walked into this person's gallery, you know, at a very difficult period of my life. I was 25 years old, and suddenly my whole life changed. And from that day till today, I'm doing what I do today. Why shouldn't I be loyal to what works? Now, what I do doesn't work for everybody. I don't expect it to work for everybody. But if you find something, whether it's what I do or somebody that really works for you, then you have to have a sense of loyalty to it, a commitment to it, and use it to grow.
Stuart, do you find that the more that you practice or the longer you practice, that the less plateaus you have?
No.
No. Still.
I mean, the plateaus are just much higher nature. That's all, the longer you practice. But there'll always be plateaus. There'll always be cycles that come to an end. Oh, you know, growth doesn't stop. And as long as there's growth, there's going to be plateaus. There's going to be cycles. There's always going to be another mountain to climb. You struggle up this enormous mountain to discover you're standing on an anthill, you know? I mean, really. So no, I don't find that. And I don't want that. I really don't want to level off. I don't want to be satisfied, you know, with my life. I want to grow. I want to do whatever I have to do to continue to grow. And it doesn't mean that I'm not happy. I am happy in my life. I have an extraordinary life. And I'm grateful for it. But I don't want it to level off. Because once it levels off, the whole spiritual evolution stops.
So on the question of plateauing, how to, I sometimes have this feeling, you practice quite a bit, and then after sometimes the experience or whatever that plateaus, and then I get suddenly in a space where I don't feel like practicing anymore, and then after some time I start again. How to avoid that?
Well, that's what I avoid. It's exactly what I avoid. I know that once you reach a plateau, life gets a little more comfortable. And life should be comfortable. I mean, I'm not saying people have to live uncomfortable, but there should be that thing inside that always says, the energy of God is infinite in the universe. And the moment I level off, I stop the growth. It's like Rudy once used the analogy of you're in an elevator in an apartment, you can shop on any floor. But the spiritual elevator takes you infinitely into the universe. So you get out and shop a little bit, you get this thing, back on the elevator, continue to grow. Because once you level off, once you get that kind of satisfied energy, the only thing that grows is your ass. And I mean that. So we need to understand that the energy of God, the energy of spirit is infinite in the universe. There's no limitation to it. It's beyond all human comprehension. And our work is to continue to grow. And that growth, that constant evolving and growing and changing and allowing our consciousness to expand and absorb higher and higher creativity, it gets us closer to God. It brings enlightenment to it. It brings wisdom. It brings knowledge. It brings so many things that are, that can never happen if you get satisfied and your whole life levels off. So one has to have that hunger inside and that need to grow. And, look, I'm a relatively calm person, my God, I don't have a lot of angst and fear and insecurities. And, I live my life with relative calm, but I love the creative flow. And I won't hold on to anything. Whatever I have to surrender, I will surrender to continue to grow. And where did I learn that? Hanging out with Rudy. I mean it. I never saw anybody do that like him. I heard about it, but I saw a living example of that type of energy. And I said, okay. I saw a man, an extraordinary being, transform a place like New York City into a temple. It was unbelievable. Everything became sacred around him. Does anyone else have a question you would like to ask? Now, this isn't easy, much easier to level off. But it certainly brings an adventurous life, creativity, you know. I mean, even just the other day, about a week ago, I was going through an old drawer in my apartment and I found something I didn't even know I had. And there's this huge manuscript of poetry I wrote, probably in the 1980s, around then, 70s. And I said, oh my God, Stuart, all that's been missing in this poetry is to edit it and get it, fix it, to use your craft that you. And suddenly I'm in the middle of writing a book. I never dreamed that I'd be writing. And I've written 58 poems already in the last week, and they all were ready to be finished. All that was missing was the skill that I've developed today to do this. And I went to a drawer, I found this thing. I said, what the hell is this? I said, holy crap. So the last week, 10 days, I've been writing these poems, and finishing them. Not all the things were there. I just needed to get them, the craft, to put it together. And that's what happens. There's always creative things that manifest in one's life to do and to create, and, Does anyone else have a question?
When do you know when you're ready to share those things?
Oh, they're ready to be shared. Right. I tell you, I wish I knew somebody right now who was a good composer, because some of these things would make great songs. Oh, they would make beautiful songs. I'm ready to share them. I used to write, in the 1970s or 80s, I used to work with a Japanese group that did concerts in New York. And I'll never forget, they once called me up. I was in Cairo, for God's sake, sitting at the Hilton Hotel, looking over the river there, the Nile. And I get a call from this guy, Stuart, we need lyrics. We're doing a concert in 4 weeks. You got to send us lyrics. So I'm sitting there writing lyrics for them in Cairo. I mean, I used to do this stuff and I love it, and it's not that I want a career in it. I don't think I'd have a career in it, but it would be fun to do. So yeah, they're ready to be seen now. They really are, I mean, I want to finish them all and then maybe I'll publish them or do something with them. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, there'll be a meditation, what is it, Thursday, Sunday. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. And again, I'll repeat it as I do at the end of every class. It's a miracle to be here. It's a miracle to be sitting with all of you. God bless you all. Thank you for having the commitment to attend these classes. It's not only hopefully teaching me a great deal, but teaching you a great deal, bringing out of me an amazing depth of spiritual practice. And I'm just grateful to all of you. God bless you all. And hopefully I will see everybody on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
Welcome. Good night.
Night, night.